When I discovered my parents secretly handed Empire Builders to my brother, I quit my 90-hour weeks cold turkey. A week later, Dad called frantic about losing a $40 million 0-cents client, and I just said, "Let Liam fix it. He's the king now." I have always believed that empires are built on sweat, sacrifice, and a relentless drive to prove yourself. For 12 years, I poured every ounce of my soul into Empire Builders, the Seattle real estate juggernaut my family carved out of the Pacific Northwest's concrete and ambition. At 34, I was Chief Strategy Officer, the heartbeat of a company that turned empty lots into skyline-defining towers. I worked 90-hour weeks, slept on office couches, and turned down love, friendships, and sunsets to keep the machine running. My father, James Harper, had promised me since I was a kid, "This empire will be yours someday, Emily." Those words were my North Star, guiding every choice, every sacrifice, until the night I discovered they were all a lie. It was a Thursday, the kind of damp, gray Seattle evening that makes you question why anyone chooses to live here. I was alone in the office, the hum of the air conditioning my only company as I sifted through a restricted server for a contract that could save our $30 million 0-cents waterfront project. My eyes burned from staring at spreadsheets, my coffee long gone cold. That's when I saw it. A folder labeled Confidential Ownership Records, tucked away like a dirty secret. My cursor hovered over it, a strange tightness gripping my chest. I shouldn't have clicked, but I did. The email that loaded on my screen felt like a sledgehammer to the gut. Dated 3 months ago, it outlined a legal agreement transferring 80% ownership of Empire Builders to my brother Liam. Liam, who'd spent his 30s backpacking through Asia, snapping artsy photos and coasting through life while I bled for this company. Liam, who waltzed back 2 years ago after a failed startup in Singapore and was handed a cushy innovation title despite knowing nothing about real estate. The document was cold, clinical, signed by my parents, James and Susan Harper, with their 20% stake intact. My name? Nowhere. Erased from the future I'd been promised since I was 10. I sat frozen, the glow of the monitor casting shadows across my trembling hands. My pulse roared in my ears, drowning out the city's hum beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. 12 years. 2 broken engagements, missed birthdays, holidays, and the chance to be anything other than Emily Harper, the workhorse of Empire Builders, all for this. A betrayal so sharp it felt like my family had plunged a knife into my back and twisted it. I don't know how long I stared at the screen, rereading the words until they blurred. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of the haze. A text from Liam. "Hey, need your notes on the waterfront specs ASAP, clients freaking out." I laughed, a brittle, hollow sound that didn't feel like mine. He had no idea I'd just uncovered his coronation. I shoved my chair back, grabbed my purse, and stormed out, leaving my laptop open, the damning email still glowing in the dark. The drive home was a blur of rain-slicked streets and neon lights. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. I was halfway across the 520 bridge when it happened. A semi-truck veered into my lane, its headlights blinding, horn blaring like a warning from hell. I swerved at the last second, my SUV skidding across the wet asphalt, tires screaming as I narrowly avoided a head-on collision. My heart pounded, adrenaline flooding my veins as I pulled onto the shoulder, gasping for air. The truck roared past, oblivious, its driver probably distracted by a phone or fatigue. I sat there, shaking, the near crash mirroring the chaos in my mind. Was this what my life had become? A series of near misses, both literal and metaphorical? I made it to my downtown apartment, a sleek, sterile space I barely lived in. It was more a crash pad than a home. Bare walls, a fridge with nothing but takeout containers, and a bed I rarely saw before midnight. I sank onto the couch, still clutching my purse, and called the one person I trusted to hear me break. Claire Dorson, my mentor from Stanford and now CEO of Dawson Developments, our biggest rival, answered on the second ring. "Emily, it's past 10. Everything okay?" "No," I choked out, my voice cracking as tears I hadn't realized were there spilled over. "They gave it to Liam, 80% of the company." Behind my back, the words felt foreign, like I was narrating someone else's nightmare. Claire listened as I poured out the story, her occasional gasps and muttered curses the only interruptions. When I finished, she didn't sugarcoat it. "This is corporate espionage-level betrayal, Emily. You need to protect yourself. Document everything. Your deals, your systems, your client relationships. And don't go back until you're ready to play hardball." Her words lit a spark in the numbness. I spent the night compiling a dossier of my contributions, the $200 million 0 cents in deals I'd closed, the project management software I'd designed from scratch, the client networks I'd built through years of late-night calls and personal touches. I was methodical, fueled by rage and Red Bull, cataloging every major project, every efficiency I'd introduced. But I was strategic too, leaving out the unwritten tricks of my trade, the client preferences I'd memorized, the negotiation tactics I'd honed. Those were mine, not empire builders. By dawn, I'd drafted a resignation email, cold and professional, activating my 8 weeks of accrued vacation and redirecting all inquiries to Liam. I hit send, turned off my work phone, and watched the Seattle skyline emerge through the morning mist. For the first time in years, I didn't have a Monday morning checklist. But the silence was deafening. Who was I without empire builders? The next day, I drove to the office at midnight to collect my belongings, choosing the hour to avoid prying eyes. The building, a glass and steel monument to our family's ambition, felt like a stranger's domain. My key still worked, but as I stepped inside, the security system malfunctioned, locking me in with a series of ominous beeps. The lights flickered, and panic clawed at my chest. I was trapped in the heart of the empire I'd built, alone in the dark, with no one to call for help. I pounded on the door, my shouts echoing in the empty lobby, until I found a manual override after 20 agonizing minutes. As I stumbled out, my heart racing, I couldn't shake the feeling that the lock wasn't an accident, was someone trying to keep me out, or keep me in. Back home, I tried to reclaim some semblance of normalcy. I went for a run along Puget Sound, the salty air sharp against my skin, and signed up for a yoga class I'd always been too busy for. But my phone kept buzzing with texts from Liam. "Where's the waterfront contract? Client's pissed." "Emily, I can't find your cost projections." I ignored them, letting the notifications pile up like unpaid bills. Then came the voicemails from my father, his voice a mix of guilt and command. "Emily, this is ridiculous. You're abandoning your responsibilities. Call me back." My mother, Susan, was softer, her messages dripping with maternal manipulation. "Sweetheart, we're worried. This isn't you. Let's talk as a family." I deleted them all, but the silence from my family was louder than their words. By day 3, the texts stopped, replaced by an eerie quiet that made me question my worth. Had they already moved on? Could Liam actually handle the chaos I'd left behind? The doubt gnawed at me, but I pushed it down, focusing on rebuilding myself. I met with my lawyer friend Sarah Nguyen, who reviewed my employment contract and the ownership documents. "Legally, they're in the clear," she said, her voice tight with indignation. "Morally, they screwed you over. You could fight for severance, negotiate a stake, or walk away and start fresh." "Start fresh," I echoed, the words foreign yet tempting. I'd never imagined a life outside empire builders. It was my identity, my legacy. Or so I'd thought. Sarah's words lingered as I spent the next few days in a strange limbo. Morning walks through Pike Place Market, sipping coffee without checking emails, reading novels I'd bought years ago but never opened. But the peace was fragile. At night, I'd wake up in a cold sweat, reliving the moment I found that email, the sting of betrayal as fresh as a new wound. On day 5, my phone lit up with a call from Richard Langston, CEO of Langston Properties, our biggest client, with a $40 million 0-cents condo project on the line. "Emily, what the hell's going on?" His gruff voice cut through the morning fog. "I've been dealing with Liam, and he doesn't know a damn thing about our specs. I need you." I closed my eyes, the familiar pull of duty tugging at me. "I'm on leave, Richard. Liam's your point person now." There was a long pause. "If you're not running this, I'm taking my business elsewhere. I don't trust anyone else with my money." His words were a lifeline and a curse. I could save the project, save the company, but at what cost? "You might want to explore your options," I said carefully, planting a seed that could shake Empire Builders to its core. After hanging up, I felt a surge of power and guilt. Was I sabotaging my family's legacy out of spite? That night, I received an anonymous email. "Stay away from Empire Builders or you'll regret it." The words sent a chill down my spine. I forwarded it to Sarah, who urged me to report it to the police, but I hesitated. Was it a prank or something more sinister? The timing felt too convenient, coming just as the company was unraveling without me. I couldn't shake the memory of the collapsing scaffolding at the waterfront site last week. I'd been inspecting a foundation late at night, alone, when the structure groaned and gave way, metal beams crashing inches from my head. I'd escaped with a sprained wrist and a racing heart, but now I wondered, was it an accident, or had someone tampered with the equipment? The next morning, I met Claire for coffee at a bustling Capitol Hill cafe. She slid a folder across the table, her eyes sharp. "OO at Dawson Developments. $500,000 a year, equity stake, and a team that respects you. You're too good for this family drama, Emily." I stared at the offer, my fingers tracing the edge of the folder. It was everything I'd ever wanted. Recognition, autonomy, a future I could control, but Empire Builders was in my blood, even after the betrayal. Could I really walk away? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a news alert. "Empire Builders server hacked, client data leaked." My stomach dropped. The article named me as the potential source of the breach, citing negligence in my role as chief strategy officer. I hadn't touched the server in weeks, but the accusation was a public gut punch, threatening to torch my reputation. Claire's eyes narrowed. "This smells like a setup. Someone's trying to pin this on you to cover their tracks." I spent the day on damage control, calling Sarah to draft a statement denying responsibility and digging through old emails for proof of my security protocols. But the timing was suspicious, coming right after the anonymous threat. Was Liam, or someone else, trying to force me out for good? The thought fueled my anger, but it also sparked a resolve I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just fighting for my job anymore. I was fighting for my name, my legacy, and the truth. By day 6, the texts from Liam resumed, more desperate now. "The waterfront project's falling apart. I need your help, Em. Please." My father's voicemails grew frantic. "Langston's pulling out. $40 million. Emily, you can't let this happen." I let them pile up, each message a reminder of how much they needed me and how little they'd valued me. But the pressure was mounting. The hacked server, the anonymous threat, the near miss with the scaffolding, all pointed to something darker lurking behind the ownership transfer. Who was the third-party investor mentioned in that cryptic note? Was my family being manipulated, or were they complicit? On day 7, James showed up at my apartment, his tailored suit wrinkled, his usual swagger replaced by desperation. "You're killing us, Emily," he said, pacing my living room like a caged lion. Langston's out, the waterfront project's a mess, and now the feds are sniffing around for safety violations at the downtown site. You have to come back. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, my voice steady despite the storm inside. Sounds like Liam's got a lot on his plate. Good thing he owns the company. His face reddened. This isn't a game. This is your grandfather's legacy. No, Dad, I shot back. You gave my legacy to Liam. I'm done cleaning up your messes. He offered me a VP title, a 20% raise, and a corner office, still reporting to Liam. I laughed, cold and sharp. I want 50% ownership, a board seat, and a 4-day work week, or I walk to Dawson Developments tomorrow. Langston's already said he'll follow me. His eyes widened, fear flickering across his face. You wouldn't. They're our biggest competitor. Try me, I said, holding his gaze. I know my worth now. Do you? He left without another word, but I knew I'd shaken him. The power had shifted, and for the first time, I wasn't begging for scraps. That night, I couldn't sleep. The anonymous email haunted me, its words looping in my mind, stay away, or you'll regret it. I opened my laptop, digging deeper into the ownership file, and found something chilling. A reference to an offshore account tied to the mysterious third party. Was this why my parents had sidelined me? Were they protecting me from something, or hiding their own corruption? The questions swirled as I prepared for the fight of my life. I wasn't just battling my family. I was battling for the truth, my future, and the empire I'd built with my own hands. The rain hadn't stopped since I walked away from Empire Builders, a relentless Seattle downpour that mirrored the storm inside me. It was day 8 of my self-imposed exile, and I was trying to piece together a life that didn't revolve around 90-hour weeks and my family's betrayal. But the world I'd built was crumbling faster than I could rebuild myself. My phone buzzed incessantly with pleas from my brother Liam and threats from my father James as the company teetered on the edge of collapse without me. I'd told them to let Liam handle it. He owned 80% of Empire Builders after all, but the truth was, I wasn't sure I could let it go either. Not yet. Not when I'd bled for it. Not when there were secrets still buried in that glass and steel empire, secrets I was determined to unearth. I met Claire Dawson for coffee at a bustling Capitol Hill cafe, the kind of place where tech bros and artists collided over overpriced lattes. Claire, my mentor from Stanford and now CEO of Dawson Developments, our fiercest rival, slid a folder across the table, her eyes glinting with the confidence of someone who'd already won. COO, Emily, $500,000 a year, equity stake in a team that won't stab you in the back. You're wasting your talent on a family that doesn't deserve you. I stared at the offer, my fingers brushing the crisp paper. It was a lifeline, a chance to escape the suffocating weight of my family's legacy, but loyalty, or maybe stubborn pride, held me back. I'm not sure I can walk away, Claire. Not until I know why they did this. My voice wavered, betraying the anger and hurt I'd been trying to bury. Claire leaned forward, her voice low. Then find out, but don't let them drag you down with them. You're too good for that. Her words lingered as I left the cafe, the rain soaking through my jacket. I wanted to believe I could start fresh, but Empire Builders was in my DNA. From age 10, I'd grown up on construction sites, memorizing project timelines while my father, James Harper, clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You'll lead this empire someday." At 15, I was managing client calls, shadowing architects, fueled by his promise. I'd turned down offers from top firms like CBRE after Stanford to join the family business, tripling our revenue as chief strategy officer with deals like the $50 million 0-cent downtown high-rise. I had sacrificed 2 engagements, missed my best friend's baby shower, and lived in a sterile apartment that was more a crash pad than a home, all for a future that had been stolen by my brother Liam, a part-time consultant who'd spent his 30s backpacking through Asia while I held the company together. The betrayal had hit like a freight train a week ago when I'd found a hidden email on a restricted server outlining the transfer of 80% ownership to Liam, signed by my parents 3 months earlier. My name was nowhere in the document, erased from the empire I'd built. Since then, I'd faced a near-fatal car crash, a collapsing scaffolding incident that felt like sabotage, a hacked server pinning a data leak on me, and an anonymous email threatening me to stay away from empire builders. The pieces didn't add up, and a cryptic note in the ownership file about a third-party investor had me wondering if my family was hiding something bigger than betrayal. That night, I couldn't avoid the inevitable. My mother, Susan, had insisted on a family dinner at their waterfront estate in Medina, a sprawling mansion that screamed old money and new ambition. I dreaded it, but I needed answers. I dressed carefully, a tailored blazer and heels, my professional armor, and drove through the rain, my stomach churning with anticipation. As I pulled into the circular driveway, the house glowed like a beacon, but it felt more like a battlefield. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Susan greeted me with a too-tight hug, her perfume cloying. "Emily, you're here. I was so worried you wouldn't come." Liam lounged on the leather sectional, sipping a whiskey, his casual demeanor a stark contrast to the chaos I knew he was facing at the company. James stood by the fireplace, his silver hair catching the light, his posture rigid as if bracing for a fight. The dining table was set with Susan's best china, a futile attempt at normalcy. We sat down to a meal of roasted salmon and asparagus, but I could barely taste it. The conversation skittered around safe topics, Susan's charity gala, the Seahawks' latest game, until I couldn't take it anymore. I reached into my bag, pulled out the ownership documents I'd printed, and slammed them onto the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "When were you going to tell me about this?" The room went silent. Susan's fork clattered against her plate. Liam froze, his glass halfway to his mouth. James's eyes narrowed, but he didn't flinch. "Where did you get those?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Does it matter?" I snapped. "You gave 80% of the company to Liam, behind my back, after promising me it was mine since I was a kid." My voice shook, but I held their gazes, refusing to back down. "I've given everything to empire builders. 12 years, 90-hour weeks, my entire life, and you hand it to someone who can't even run a meeting?" James leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly. "This was a strategic decision, Emily. Liam's global perspective is what we need to expand into international markets. Dubai, Singapore, London. He's got the vision." "Vision?" I laughed, the sound bitter. "He's got a passport full of stamps and a failed startup. I tripled our revenue. I closed the $50 million 0 cents high-rise deal. I built the systems that keep this company running, and you think he's the future?" Susan reached for my hand, her eyes glistening. "Sweetheart, we didn't mean to hurt you. I trusted your father's judgment. We were going to tell you when the time was right." I yanked my hand away. "The right time was before you signed these papers, Mom, not 3 months later." Liam finally spoke, his voice unsteady. "I didn't know Dad promised you the company, Em. He came to me with the idea, said it was best for everyone." His eyes darted to James, and I caught a flicker of something, guilt maybe, or fear. "A consultant advised us on the transfer, said it was the smart move." I leaned forward, my pulse quickening. "What consultant? Who are they?" Liam's mouth opened, then closed, and he looked to James for rescue. My father waved it off. "That's irrelevant. The decision's made." The dismissal ignited something in me. Irrelevant? You stole my future, and you won't even tell me why? I stood, my chair scraping against the hardwood. I got an offer from Dawson Developments today. COO, $500,000 a year equity stake. They value me unlike you. Susan gasped, her hand flying to her throat. James's face darkened. You wouldn't dare. Dawson's our biggest competitor. I met his glare. I haven't accepted yet, but I'm done working for a company that lies to me. I quit. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. Liam's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the table, amber liquid pooling like blood. Susan started to cry, but I didn't care. I grabbed the documents and my bag, storming toward the door. Let Liam handle the $30 million 0-cents waterfront project, I called over my shoulder. He's the visionary, right? As I reached my car, the rain pounding against my face, Liam's voice stopped me. Emily, wait. I turned, expecting an apology, but his expression was desperate, almost panicked. You can't leave. The company's falling apart without you. I laughed, cold and sharp. That's your problem now, Liam. You wanted the crown. Wear it. I drove away, my heart racing, a mix of rage and liberation coursing through me. But the victory was short-lived. That night, I went to the office at midnight to collect my belongings, determined to sever ties cleanly. The building was dark, the security system eerily quiet as I slipped inside. I packed my photos, awards, and personal files, moving quickly, but as I reached the door, the system activated with a deafening alarm, locking me in. The lights flickered and panic clawed at my chest. I was trapped, alone in the heart of Empire Builders with no way out. My breaths came in shallow gasps, a full-blown panic attack taking hold as I pounded on the glass door, my shouts swallowed by the empty lobby. After 20 agonizing minutes, I found a manual override, stumbling into the rain, my body trembling. Was it a glitch, or had someone rigged the system to trap me? The next morning, I woke to a new routine, determined to reclaim my life. I ran along Puget Sound, the salty air clearing my head, and booked a therapy session to process the betrayal. I called old friends, apologizing for years of neglect, and laughed over wine like I hadn't in a decade. But the peace was fragile. Liam's texts escalated, each one more frantic. The waterfront clients threatening to sue, they want you back. I'm drowning, Em. My father's voicemails swung between guilt and threats. You're sabotaging us, Emily. We'll sue if you leak client info to Dawson. I ignored them, but the pressure was mounting. Then came a bombshell. A whistleblower from the finance team, using an anonymous burner email, sent me a tip. Check Liam's ownership deal. Offshore accounts involved. Follow the money. My heart stopped. Was this why my family had sidelined me? Were they hiding financial misconduct? I forwarded the email to my lawyer friend, Sarah Nguyen, who warned me to tread carefully. Offshore accounts could mean tax evasion, embezzlement, or worse. You need hard proof. On day 5, Richard Langston, CEO of Langston Properties, called my personal cell. His $40 million 0-cents condo project was Empire Builders' lifeline, and his voice was pure steel. Emily, I'm done with Liam. He doesn't know the specs, the timelines, nothing. If you're not running this, I'm pulling out. I leaned back in my chair, the familiar pull of duty warring with my resolve. I'm on leave, Richard. Liam's your guy now. He snorted. Liam's a clown. I'm shopping for new firms. Unless you come back, we're done. I paused, then planted a seed. You might want to explore your options. Empire Builders isn't what it used to be. Hanging up, I felt a surge of power and guilt. Was I burning my family's legacy to the ground? That evening, James stormed into my apartment, his face a mask of fury. "You're leaking client concerns to Dawson, aren't you?" he roared, pacing my living room like a caged animal. "Langston's pulling out and the waterfront project's a disaster. You're destroying us." I stood my ground, arms crossed. "I'm not leaking anything. But I know Liam's been pitching my proprietary software to a rival firm. That's intellectual property theft, Dad. I could sue." His eyes widened, a flicker of fear breaking through his anger. "You're bluffing." I wasn't. I'd found emails on the server before I left, Liam boasting to a competitor about game-changing software I'd designed. It was a reckless move, and I had the screenshots to prove it. "I want 50% ownership, a board seat, and a 4-day work week," I said, my voice steady. "Or I walk to Dawson tomorrow. Langston's already promised to follow me." James scoffed, but his bravado was crumbling. "You're not getting 50%. I'll give you VP a 20% raise and a corner office. Report to Liam." I laughed, cold and sharp. "Liam can't run a lemonade stand. You need me, Dad, not him." He glared, but I saw the calculations in his eyes. "Langston's $40 million 0 cents. The waterfront project, the federal investigation into safety violations at our downtown site. I need to think," he muttered, storming out. The investigation was another blow. A major project site was under federal scrutiny for faulty equipment, linked to the scaffolding collapse I'd narrowly escaped. The feds were sniffing around, and Liam's texts hinted at panic. "They're asking for safety logs. Where are they?" I hadn't responded, but the pressure to step in was crushing. If the investigation escalated, it could bankrupt Empire Builders. Was I willing to let it fall to prove a point? Susan showed up the next day, a casserole in hand, her eyes red from crying. "Your father's a mess, Emily," she said, setting the dish on my counter. "He hasn't slept since you left." I poured coffee, unmoved. "He's upset about losing money, not me," she sighed, sitting at my table. "It's more complicated. I pushed for Liam's ownership. You were so dominant, so perfect. I thought it would balance things, give him a chance to shine." Her words stung, a fresh betrayal. "You thought I was too good, so you gave my company to him?" She flinched. "I didn't mean it like that. We love you both." "Love doesn't look like this, Mom," I said, my voice breaking. "You erased me." She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "My terms stand: 50% ownership, board seat, 4-day work week." She nodded, tears spilling over. "Your father's talking to our lawyer. He's considering it." As she left, I felt a flicker of hope and dread. What if they met my demands? Could I trust them again? That afternoon, I met Claire again at a waterfront bistro, the Space Needle looming in the distance. She sweetened the Dawson offer, a $50,000 0 cents signing bonus, and creative control over new projects. "You'd be a partner in 5 years," she said, her voice firm. "No family drama, no backstabbing. Just you, building something new." I wanted to say yes, to cut ties and start over, but the whistleblower's email about offshore accounts nagged at me. If my family was involved in something illegal, I needed to know. As I left the bistro, my phone buzzed with a news alert. "Empire Builders faces smear campaign, allegations of fund mismanagement." The article quoted anonymous sources claiming I'd siphoned funds during my tenure as chief strategy officer. My blood ran cold. I hadn't touched a dime, but the rumors were spreading like wildfire, torching my reputation. Claire's warning echoed. "Someone's trying to pin this on you." Was it Liam, desperate to shift blame, or the mysterious consultant Liam had mentioned? I spent the night digging through old emails, searching for clues. Buried in James's sent folder, I found a message to an unknown recipient promising exclusive benefits for facilitating the ownership transfer. The email was vague, but the tone was conspiratorial, hinting at a deal that went beyond family dynamics. My hands shook as I screenshot it, forwarding it to Sarah. "This could be the key," she replied, "but it's dangerous." If they're hiding money offshore, they'll fight dirty to protect it. The next morning, a fire broke out at our key waterfront project site, the one Liam was botching. News helicopters buzzed overhead, and my phone lit up with texts from him. Fire at the site. Millions in damage. I need you, Em. I stared at the screen, torn between duty and defiance. The fire was contained, but the damage was catastrophic, threatening to sink the $30 million 0 cents project. Against my better judgment, I called Richard Langston, calming him with promises of a recovery plan I didn't have. "I knew I could count on you," he said, but his words felt like chains. I wasn't back, not yet, but I couldn't let the company burn. That evening, James called, his voice formal. "We want to meet tomorrow, downtown steakhouse, noon. You, me, Susan, Liam, and our lawyer, David Klein." I agreed, my heart pounding. This was it, the negotiation that would decide my future. I spent the night preparing like I would for a billion-dollar deal, reviewing financials, anticipating objections, and practicing my demands. 50% ownership, a board seat, a 4-day work week. No compromises. The steakhouse was all dark wood and leather, a power broker's haven. My family was already seated, David Klein's leather portfolio open before him. Susan tried to hug me, but I offered a handshake, keeping it professional. Liam looked haggard, his usual charm replaced by exhaustion. James's eyes were cold, but I saw fear beneath the surface. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice clipped. "We've reviewed your proposal." Before he could continue, Liam interrupted, his voice raw. "I need to say something." He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I'm sorry, Em. I'm in over my head. The waterfront project, the fire, Langston. I can't do this. I'll give you 40% ownership right now from my share." The table went silent. Susan gasped, and James's jaw tightened. I hadn't expected this. Liam, the golden boy, surrendering. "Well, now?" I asked, my voice steady but suspicious. Liam sighed, running a hand through his hair. "The consultant Dad hired. They pushed for me to take over. Said I was the face the company needed, but I'm not you. I never was." My eyes flicked to James. "Who's the consultant, Dad? And why are they calling the shots?" James shifted, uncomfortable. "They're an investor. They advised us on global expansion." His evasiveness fueled my suspicion. "An investor with offshore accounts?" I pressed, watching his reaction. His silence was answer enough. Susan broke the tension, her voice trembling. "We made a mistake, Emily. We hurt you and we're sorry. We want you back." David cleared his throat. "Let's discuss terms." For the next hour we negotiated, the air crackling with tension. James countered with 25% ownership, which I rejected outright. Liam's offer of 40% stood, reducing his stake to 40%, with my parents retaining 20%. I pushed for co-CEO status, equal power with Liam, and a mandatory 40-hour workweek for all executives. "No more 90-hour weeks," I said firmly. "We're building a company, not a prison." To my surprise, Liam agreed, his relief palpable. James resisted, but the threat of Langston's $40 million 0 cents loss and the federal investigation forced his hand. The final agreement included a clause requiring my approval for major decisions, securing my influence. As David drafted the letter of intent, a new email hit my inbox. A mysterious investor offering to fund my own startup if I left Empire Builders. "We believe in your vision," it read, signed only with initials J.R. My pulse raced. Who was this? A rival? The consultant? Or someone else entirely? I tucked the email away, my mind spinning with possibilities. We signed the letter, each signature a step toward a new future. James went first, his hand steady but his eyes conflicted. Susan followed, tears streaming down her face. Liam's hand shook, but he met my gaze with a nod of respect. I signed last, my heart pounding with a mix of triumph and uncertainty. As we left the restaurant, Susan hugged me, and this time, I let her. "We have a lot to rebuild," she whispered. I nodded, my throat tight. "We do." That night, I called Claire to decline her offer, explaining the new deal. "You're staying with them?" she asked, incredulous. "After everything?" I smiled, staring at the Seattle skyline from my balcony. "I'm not staying for them. I'm staying for me. I built this company and I'm taking it back." Claire laughed. "That's the Emily I know, but if it falls apart, my door's open." A month later, I walked into Empire Builders as co-CEO, my new office a symbol of change, open, modern, with views of the Sound. The company was thriving under our new structure. Liam focused on client relations, his charm winning new accounts, while I streamlined operations, cutting costs without sacrificing quality. The fire damage was repaired, Langston's contract secured, and the federal investigation closed with minor James stepped into an advisory role, his retirement looming, and for the first time he seemed at peace. I'd changed too. I hiked Mount Rainier on weekends, started dating a quiet architect named Ethan, and adopted a rescue dog, a golden retriever who greeted me with slobbery kisses. Sunday dinners with my family were cautious but healing, each one a step toward trust. The mysterious investor, JR, sent another email hinting at a meeting, but I wasn't ready to chase that rabbit hole. Not yet. For now, I was building something new, a life where I valued myself as much as my work. As I stood in my office, watching the sunset paint the skyline gold, I realized the betrayal had been a gift. It had forced me to fight for my worth, to redefine my legacy. Empire Builders was mine again, not just the company, but the empire of my own making, and no one could take that away.